the evolution of the college kid cocktail. If you ask the average American what they remember most about college, I'd bet it isn't their classes, but the parties they attended, and those memories are probably pretty hazy. Whether you went out every weekend or saved your drinking for a special occasion, college and alcohol seem to go hand in hand here in the States. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the evolution of college drinking, from the complicated history of the legal drinking age, to the theories behind party mentality, to the latest college cocktail trend, the BORG. Let's get into it. The American public has had quite the tumultuous relationship with alcohol over the years, and its consumption has been hotly contested since the colonial period, leading to the popularity of the temperance movement. In 1917, the 18th Amendment was passed, which illegalized the manufacture, transportation, and sale of alcohol due to the belief that this ban would alleviate poverty and other societal problems. In 1919, the amendment was ratified to become constitutional, and on January 17, 1920, the National Prohibition Act, also known as the Volstead Act, was in full effect across the country. Despite the government's best efforts, the American public were quick to find loopholes, and their desire for a drink created an entirely new array of problems, including a boom in illegal industries like bootlegging, rum running, speakeasies, and black markets, which eventually led to the rise of organized crime and gangs. Over the course of the decade, it became obvious that prohibition was largely unenforceable, and many Americans began to openly oppose the alcohol ban. After 13 years, the 18th Amendment was finally repealed by the 21st Amendment, which also dictated that every state had to adopt a minimum legal drinking age policy, with most states electing for an MLDA of 21. Through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, this became more relaxed, and a handful of states began lowering their MLDA to 18 or 19, depending on the type of alcohol. During the Vietnam War, thousands of 18-year-olds were being shipped off to die, and yet they were still legally unable to vote, and thereby unable to have any say on the policies that affected them directly. As a result, in 1971, the 26th Amendment changed the national voting age from 21 to 18, which had a major effect on the drinking world. With 18-year-olds now being old enough to vote, serve in the military, get married, and own a house, then surely they were old enough to drink a beer, right? By 1974, half of the states had lowered their MLDAs to under 20, and it became more and more common for college and high school age students to drink alcohol. Teen drinking eventually reached its peak in the early 80s, with one survey finding that at least 74% of high school boys and 65% of high school girls drank alcohol. This low drinking age came to a screeching halt in 1984 when Congress passed the National Minimum Age Drinking Act, which required all states to raise their minimum age for purchasing and possessing alcoholic beverages to 21, or have up to 10% of its federal highway funds withheld. This meant that depending on the size of the state, they were at risk of losing between $8 to $99 million of funding a year. So unsurprisingly, they complied with this new ordinance. And by 1988, all 50 states had increased the legal drinking age to 21. Although the entire country obliged by these new rules, there was one place that underage drinking continued to thrive: college campuses. With social events like frat parties, tailgates, darties, and bar hopping becoming more and more popular with each passing year, finding alcohol around a college campus is easier than finding a pen to borrow. We've all seen movies that encourage overconsumption and glamorize drinking culture, specifically amongst teenagers and young adults, with films like the American Pie series, Animal House, Neighbors, Project X, Superbad, and many others being touted as must-sees before heading off to college for the first time. Because the media has been pushing this party animal message for the better part of 40 years, alcohol has since become a near inescapable aspect of the American college experience, and combined with peer pressure, many college kids feel like they have to drink in order to fit in. Binge drinking, which is defined as drinking an excessive amount of alcohol in a short period of time, is not only normalized while in college, but expected, and it can lead to more dangerous behavior in the future. While studies show most high-risk student drinkers reduce their alcohol consumption after leaving college, others may continue patterns of excessive drinking, which can lead to alcoholism or other medical conditions related to chronic alcohol abuse. We all know the potential dangers and risks that come with drinking in excess. So why do college kids continue to partake in these activities? Well, there are a few theories. Some attribute alcohol's continued popularity on college campuses due to its contraband status, with the use and abuse of liquor being seen as mystical and sophisticated because of its association with adulthood. College is usually a teenager's first experience away from home and living on their own, and many of them find themselves testing the limits of this newfound freedom. However, because these teens have little to no prior experience with alcohol, chances are they don't know their own tolerance levels and end up drinking well past their limits. Another reason, as briefly mentioned before, is the pressure of feeling like you have to drink or get drunk to have a good time and fit in with the crowd. This is especially an issue if you join a fraternity or sorority, institutions where attendance to these sorts of events are expected. It also doesn't help that certain colleges are notorious for being party schools, which feeds into the expectations of participating in unhealthy drinking habits from those who attend. As if peer pressure and overcompensating for freedom weren't enough, there's also the issue of adult vendors catering and selling alcohol to minors. While some bars and clubs are complicit in the behavior, purposely looking the other way, underage drinkers have also found ways to cheat the system with fake IDs. Although underage drinking is illegal, many colleges don't bother implementing any disciplinary procedures for alcohol-related incidents as they lack the resources and authority to do anything about it. And because of this lack of consequence, students have become more and more bold. With alcohol being a staple at many college parties, hundreds of drinking games have been created over the years. Whether it's King's Cup or Never Have I Ever, all of these games have one common goal: to get the players as drunk as they can. Yet another reminder that drinking in excess has become so normalized that we've turned it into a competition. Beer pong is perhaps the most well-known out of all of the American drinking games, with red solo cups and ping pong balls being immediately associated with the game. Dartmouth College is sometimes credited with the invention of the game, with some claiming that it was created sometime during the 50s or 60s after students left cups of beer on a ping pong table and others began aiming for the cups. This is challenged by Bucknell University, who claim that members of their Delta Epsilon chapter created throw pong in the 1970s. Although the exact date and origin are up for debate, what we do know is that the game was originally played with ping pong paddles, before being brought to Lehigh University where students opted to toss the balls rather than hit them. Since then, the tossing method has become the norm, and is no longer a game reserved for college dorm rooms, with some bars setting up beer pong tables right alongside dartboards. Besides beer pong, other popular drinking games include Drunk Jenga and Edward Forty Hands. The former is similar to the original game, just with each tile having a set of rules written on them. And this do the exact same thing, just with drinking, is a common format for many drinking games. Edward Forty Hands, on the other hand, pun intended, is a totally new invention, one whose creation we can only credit to chance. As you can probably guess, the name Edward Forty Hands is inspired by Tim Burton's 1990 fantasy romance film, Edward Scissorhands. The rules are simple. Players have to duct tape a 40-ounce bottle of malt liquor to their hands, and can't remove them until they've consumed both bottles entirely. Depending on your mindset, this can either be a punishment or the goal. On one hand, you're not able to do anything until your hands are freed, but you've also just tugged two 40s. The first internet mention of Edward Forty Hands is traced back to 2003, but people have cited playing the game as early as 2001. Regardless, the game didn't become a nationwide phenomenon until 2007, coinciding with a mention of the game in the New York Times in an interview about director Judd Apatow. The game hit its peak in 2011, garnering an appearance in the sitcom How I Met Your Mother, and Google search traffic hitting an all-time high. The popularity of the game later led to the creation of Amy Winehands, which has a similar premise but with bottles of wine. I'm personally not a huge fan of that moniker, considering the person it takes inspiration from openly struggled with substance abuse. One of the only things that has been proven to put a damper on college drinking is the financial aspect. But as with most products, one way to avoid paying steep prices is to make it yourself, sacrificing quality for quantity. One example of a cheap and easy cocktail is Jungle Juice, arguably one of the most popular mixed drinks on a college campus. Most commonly defined as a blend of grain alcohol and fruit juice that's stored in a large basin, like a trash can, empty cooler, or even a bathtub, the term can be found as early as 1909, appearing in an article that noted the combination of bootlegged liquor and Mountain Dew to be the cause of a disturbance amongst a group of hillbillies in Oklahoma. By World War II, the term had gained more widespread use amongst American and Australian troops in New Guinea, who used it to refer to a concoction of coconut juice with raisins which had been allowed to ferment. The recipe for jungle juice has continued to evolve with time, and modern takes on the punch/cocktail are made up of everything, including the kitchen sink. I personally remember consuming a particularly rough batch made with Everclear, which was served out of a storage container. While recipes for jungle juice can vary wildly, one constant is its potency, and many inexperienced drinkers have fallen prey to the drink's deceptively sweet flavor, which masks that it should be treated as cautiously as straight liquor. It's also important to mention that the traditional way of serving jungle juice isn't necessarily the safest, as these large containers can be easily tampered with. Every generation has innovated on what came before it in some way, and drinking is no exception. While jungle juice had an impressive grip on millennials and Generation X, Gen Z students have taken the tried and true beverage in a new direction. Introducing the BORG, also known as the Blackout Rage Gallon. Hailed for being a hangover-proof cocktail, the BORG contains a half-gallon of water, a half-gallon of liquor, caffeinated flavor enhancers, and electrolyte drinks, all poured into a plastic gallon container. With water making up half of the beverage, it supposedly allows you to stay hydrated even whilst drinking, in theory reducing the chances of a hangover the following day. Additionally, because the gallon bottle is for a single person, the risk of someone spiking the drink is drastically minimized. Besides being able to customize the drink as they see fit, students have made the BORG even more fun by decorating and naming the container, usually giving it a name that is a play on the BORG acronym. According to Global News, the first BORG appearance on social media emerged in 2020 and slowly gained popularity throughout the pandemic, which makes sense considering the world had become more cautious about the spread of germs. The communal kegs and coolers of prior generations were a free-for-all when it came to consumption, hygiene, and safety, and comparatively, Gen Z's BORG are a lot less concerning. Not to mention that with the contents of your BORG being totally up to you, you can participate in the trend without peer pressure, even opting for an alcohol-free version if you choose to. While the BORG has been praised online for its ingenuity and being seemingly healthier than traditional drinking, some specialists aren't on board with the drink. According to Dr. Gus Colangelo, quote, "It actually makes it more dangerous. If you take a fifth of vodka, which is about 16 shots, and pour that into half a gallon of water with some electrolytes, it doesn't absolve the fact that you're still drinking 16 shots of vodka." Professor David Jernigan shares the sentiment, saying, quote, "Calling this a trendy thing is trivializing. This is simply encouraging more binge drinking. Keeping yourself hydrated is not going to meaningfully reduce the risks of drinking." Since its emergence in 2020 and its rise in popularity, searches related to the BORG have garnered over 67 million views on TikTok, with students' witty tutorials, experiences, and interviews flooding the platform. This social media explosion has raised concern over whether Gen Z has considered how their digital footprint will impact their futures. After all, what might seem like a fun video about drinking today could be the reason an employer decides to not hire you tomorrow. As we've mentioned, underage drinking has been difficult to monitor, especially on college campuses. But if this behavior is being documented publicly, even going viral in some cases, will there be consequences then? Regardless of its possible pros or cons, the BORG is very much a product of its time, created by a generation that has already spent a good chunk of their teen and young adult years in a pandemic. Overall, only time will tell whether this hefty cocktail will remain a staple on college campuses or fade into obscurity in favor of the next new drink trend. When we're living in the moment, we tend to ignore the possible consequences of our actions. And with alcohol, the damage can be done in the blink of an eye, or slowly but surely take a toll on your body over time. So whether you're sticking with beer, trying out a BORG, or playing Edward 40 hands, just remember that a good time isn't worth your life or well-being. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!